As a leader in the grief space, I've cared for and supported families and communities for over 20 years. This show dives into the journey and experiences all of us will most certainly encounter in life. Welcome to the Guiding Grief podcast, where we discuss grief and explore opportunities for growth and connection. I'm your host, Nicholas Welzenbach, and this is Guiding Grief on KCAT TV. Welcome back to the Guiding Grief podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Welzenbach. I am so excited to introduce you to Juliann Halvorsen. She is a therapist at Cancer Care Point. Cancer Care Point is a local organization doing good through multiple counties in our local community, serving individuals that are fighting and battling cancer, and more importantly, the holistic approach of caring for their entire family, which is absolutely incredible and noble. Juliann, I'm so excited to have you here.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
How long have you been with Cancer Care Point now?
It'll be 4.5 years coming up.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I when people learn of what I do, I think a lot of people can come to assumptions about like, oh, you must like to be depressed on a regular basis. But I couldn't be happier involving my therapist skills that I have, and also my love and learning knowledge of like mind and body awareness, and then also like how the medical field can be incorporated with this too. Like all three of those are things that I get to use on a daily basis, and I didn't think that I would be able to do that. So I feel really honored to do the work that I do.
Well, that's awesome. Well, one of the things that I want to focus in on this Guiding Grief podcast is the fact that typically when people think of Nicholas and Darling Fisher Lascatus Memorial Park, our sponsors, they think grief associated with the loss of a loved one. And grief has no bounds. And you focus on caring for individuals that are grieving the way that they were, transition in life as it relates to battling cancer and in their families. So how much of the balance of your work is directly with a cancer patient versus the family?
Yeah, great question. I would like to say 50-50 right off hand, but it definitely, there's like different pie pieces of working with, of course, the patient that has cancer, whether that means newly diagnosed in survivorship or end of life. And then I can work with couples. So of course, like there's a lot of discourse that can happen with the cancer diagnosis. Right. So things really shift at home and communication really shifts. So working with the couples in there, and then as long as everyone's adults, because we only work with adults right now, 18 and over. So the family can all get together, like 5 or 6 people can all be in the same room together. It gets a little bit more fuzzy when it's on Zoom.
Yeah. Is there less of that now, or is there still, I imagine that there was a fair bit of that for quite some time post-COVID universe, but is that dwindling, or is it still? It's
still pretty fair. Like again, probably like 50-50. People do want to be seen in person more often, but the convenience factor, and on top of that, like when you have a cancer diagnosis, sometimes you can't leave your house.
Right.
So there's the added benefit of like, I can meet with someone in their hospice bed at home, right? Or like their family members who would like them to get out of the house, but they're immunocompromised, and so I am able to see them. As long as they're in a private location where, they have confidentiality and privacy,
right,
then we can do this.
Between those two pieces, obviously the in-person is always the best. I imagine so much of it is associated with being able to read body language better than you can through someone's screen. And
yeah,
is it prohibitive to maybe understanding a little bit more, or being able to delve into deeper things?
Great question. Also, like when COVID first hit, there was a lot of us being creative in the therapy world of like, we still need to see our clients for like ethical clinical best practice, but then there was like, I'll just talk to you on the phone for a while, I guess. And so it was like you ideally you can't really do therapy through a door, right? And that's not
yeah.
I'd like to see if you're in crisis. And so as soon as we could, like we got, and it didn't take long, thankfully, for us to just like one day we were in person, and then COVID hit, and then we were able to see people online. So making sure that, because there's also questions I have to ask people when I do meet them online to make sure like, this is you are in a private location, and I do need to pay more close attention to like, are you fidgeting more than you would usually, or do I hear other voices in the background, which means like now I can't talk, right? Because something's impeding our privacy together. So a lot of multitasking that I never saw coming during the pandemic. And I got into a field that I was like, I want to see people in person, but now I have eye issues now because I have been on a computer for so long.
Oh my God, yes.
So,
yeah.
just things you gotta roll with and try to do your best, because there's my license that I need to keep in mind and make sure that I am up and all my ethical practices.
Right.
So.
Someone doing dishes in the background, that's a no-go.
I can't, or we work right next to a hospital, and fortunately my earphones are protected from my clients, but I hear sirens going by, and so I'm like, you see this like look on my face of like, hold on, stop talking.
Yeah.
They're like, are you okay? I'm like, I can't concentrate when there's a siren going by.
Yes, yeah.
So.
We'll pause
Yes.
for just a moment so I can be fully engaged.
Exactly.
So I want to just kind of dive into it. I know that with patient confidentiality, like we're not going to get into actual patients, but as it relates to the things that you're triaging or guiding, as it relates to, is it the fear of death that you're focusing on more often than not? Is it the loss of hair, the change of life? Is it the whole gamut? I mean, does a patient come in and I've experienced cancer and loss in my life as it relates to my brother, but he didn't have this, or he didn't go and seek this out. And I can just imagine how much better that would have been for him and his wife at the time to have these conversations, just opening up that dialogue and understanding maybe where, someone that's maybe more traditionally male in the Midwest is gonna, I'm gonna hunker down and not share those feelings, versus his brother that lives on the West Coast that's like, oh, let's get into all the feelings, right? So how does that, or what is the scope or things that you can share?
Yeah, so I think people coming through the door, literally or over the phone, a lot of times they'll just call us and they're like, I don't know what's wrong, but something's wrong, and I can't continue the way that I have been living my life given this cancer diagnosis. And so because we operate on a short-term basis, also not like general therapy where like you could take weeks to build trust with somebody. In the first phone call, I am listening very intently for how I can get in the trenches with somebody, whether that's through like blind spots with talking to your medical team, coping with like future like anticipated loss that you're going to go through, end of life struggles, your partnership breaking down because you don't have that intimacy factor anymore. Like there are so many different factors that I'm listening for in that initial phone call, and I feel like there's a sense of urgency because I don't have that long to work with somebody, and like letting them know the impact of like, here's what I'm hearing in this phone call. I'm not sure if this is like landing for you, but you need to let me know if this is an issue, because I'm hearing it as one. So I will bring up all these orange flags that I'm hearing. They're like, that's exactly what I need. And I'm like, oh, so we're putting language to your experience, like I was saying before. Like
people words, right?
Yeah, when people are in crisis, bringing objective language to your experience is one of the most difficult things to do. And I consider it such an honor to like, I'm not going anywhere. Like I'm going to be in the trenches with you. Let's figure this out together. And there are ways, even though I can't change what's happening to you, I can definitely try to see if we can change perception shifts or like try to help you with better communication. So you feel like you're in the driver's seat with your medical care and with your family or loved ones.
I just, that light speed, I mean, knowing that I've been through therapy and I've had the benefits that are associated with, but it is this long built up trust. I mean, if you're working with someone for years and having conversations on a monthly basis or whatever it might be, and you're like, oh, okay, I feel more comfortable to share.
I'll open up like 3 months down the line.
Right? Yeah. We're just kind of toe in the water. There's no toe in the water.
I may not have 3 months with somebody.
Yeah.
Really, if you think about it. So yeah, it's important. And I think because I believe that I bring so much authenticity to my job that people pick up on that too. And so they're not like kind of picking out like, you're not using your real voice right now, or I don't believe you when you say that, or that's therapist talk, you need to stop talking like that. So I don't carry the airs with me that I think is stereotypically some of the things that therapists bring with them. And so I'm having that combination when I speak to someone on the first go around. And I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea either, but working in partnership and letting someone know through my authenticity, like even in the first phone call, like I got you, like what's going on, that it is amazing. And you talk about people from like different walks of life and they're like, my wife says that I should go to therapy, and I'm like, okay, do you want therapy?
Yeah.
This needs to be consensual on both ends, and not like not holding them to this guarantee that this is going to work, right? And making it more of a collaborative effort rather than I'm going to give you a whole bunch of information and it's up to you to change, or it's up to you to swallow this medicine so your life will be better, right? It's like everyone's going to make their own choice and they're on their own journey, and it's up to them.
Just
ultimately.
hopefully the guidance they can provide in that short period of time will help to set a better course. I just it changes the scope and understanding of grief when you're thinking of it in like real time.
Yes.
I'm alive, I'm grieving, what's happening to me, and knowing that it's great if someone's able to open up to you, because if you hear, and I imagine that's just as telling if someone's withholding as it is, but what in your previous life and previous working allowed you to find a way to do this, to know that you had to? Was it an easy transition for you to be like, okay, I don't have time to build trust based on the circumstances?
Yeah.
Did you have to change in your profession to learn new skill sets, or?
Actually, when I started, my job looked very different even when I first started this job. And so we didn't have the structure that we have now. And I'm so thankful that I've been able to be a creative part of that piece also, to help the company, help the organization, like really solidify, like what's our goal here? What do we want to get out of this? And to put a stop of like 12 to 15 sessions on somebody, like that can feel very stifling to a lot of people. Yeah. It's like, what are you going to, what's your end goal out of like 12 to 15? Like that other people would take like months or, weeks or months to like grow that trust. And so to know that I want to have someone be at least like maybe more stable than they have been, to get them out of crisis, to help utilize, like, you have a care team around you, like let you know about their specialists that can help you. So it makes my work, my intention, very purposeful, because I can't I can't let like 50 minutes go by and just say like, and how does that make you feel? Right, yeah.
Because you have to focus on advocacy in the patient universe, like self-advocacy.
Oh my
because
gosh.
You're going through the machine that is hospitals, and they're treating symptoms, and you're trying to say, well, this is or how do you do that? I'm being assumptive about what I was about to say, but when someone is going to see the doctor, are you involved in that, about, hey, you need to ask this question?
Yep. So a lot of work, and I do want to get on the grief topic too, because I think grieving that you have to be a patient now is huge for people to like. That's a big loss of independence, right? That like, I now need a team alongside of me to get through this, and like I need to know the names and specialties and the scope of practice for a lot of different professionals out there that could be utilized, because a lot of times patients don't know. They're just like slip some forms, like, here's what to expect with chemo, like, good luck with that. And I'm like, well, okay, so there's more information that you should know, and and here are things to like kind of ask. And so I will like, some of the tools that I help people put in their toolkit is like, what are the green, yellow, and red lights of symptoms? Like, what is something that everybody can kind of be like, yeah, people get this. What's yellow light of, please monitor this, don't let it get any worse? And red light is, don't waste any time, go back to the ED. So empowering people in that way, where they can feel like they're in the driver's seat of their care, is huge for me to be able to feel proud about. Like, by the time I don't work with you anymore, and either I fly you off to independence and you can just thrive, or to a general therapist because there might be other things going on. Once you leave my care, I want to feel confident that you are able to ask these questions, that you feel like
your legs are under you.
Yes, that your doctor is listening to you, and that you feel like I can speak up if something's wrong.
Wow. Another thing that you touched on there, which is the pain. I'm thinking of like red, yellow, green, and also like pain tolerance that's associated with in that withholding of the 10, and just understanding that, like, 10 is death typically, so I'm not using that, even though it's 11 and 12.
Yes.
and just allowing some to have language around what is physically hurting them.
And that, like 1 through 10 pain scale, I use 1 through 30.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, let's
like
broaden
1
the
through
scope.
10, yeah. Oh. And people that say like I was at a 27, right? It's like I never thought I could get there and like still be alive. And that's, it's mind blowing to know where you have been in terms of the outer limits of being a human and what the body is capable of doing. And I am still here and able to advocate for myself and kind of processing and reflecting. Like a lot of my work is also, when I'm not in the throes of a crisis with somebody, is kind of talking about what the heck happened back there.
Yeah.
Because that was crazy. And like when you're in, you know, the deer in headlights or the blinders phase, because you just do what doctors tell you and you're in and out and all the scheduling is taken care of for you, you don't think about, how is this going to impact my family? How is this going to impact my body? Because it's not safe to think about that stuff until a lot of times after. And so working with kind of getting to know where people's safety structure is and like thinking about the future or thinking about the past, that's also something that I have to juggle in terms of where their strong suits are and who are they as a patient, I guess.
I want to continue the conversation, and we will right after this brief break from our sponsors. Thank you so much for listening in to this episode of Guiding Grief. We're with Juliann Halvorsen from Cancer Care Point. We hope you'll tune back in just after this short break. We'll see you in a second. I'd like to take an opportunity and pause just to thank our sponsors, Darling Fisher and Los Gatos Memorial Park, celebrating lives one story at a time. As members of the community here in Campbell, San Jose, and Los Gatos, it has been an honor to care for so many of the loved ones of our community, and we are so grateful for your trust. That's why we're supporting this podcast, Guiding Grief, and bringing your community information about how to heal. Welcome back to Guiding Grief. We're sitting here with Juliann Halvorsen. We're going to continue our conversation. There was something that you mentioned just before we stepped into break, which was an aha moment of something that I just would have never thought of, right? When you peel the onion of grief and you're thinking to yourself like, oh, what am I grieving? But you mentioned a patient acknowledging he's a patient. If when they identify themselves as that, I need help.
Yeah.
That's a tough thing for someone to acknowledge. So I want to get into that grief aspect and the things that you do help and support, and anything you can share with us in that space with helping someone identify where they're at and how you're going to guide them in that journey.
Yeah. I think just going down the list, if I internally kind of list all the grieving factors that are a part of my job, therapy period is about grief because it's about transition. Usually, right. Every transition that someone goes through, that's what they might go to therapy for. And so my job is all transitions and happening very quickly and happening sometimes like I don't want to say non-consensually, but like fine, I'll agree to this because otherwise I'm going to die. So it's kind of slowing down time and looking at giving someone their own advocacy and sense of strength. I want to also like build on people's innate personality strength too, rather than like them focusing on, oh, I haven't been this person for my wife before and now all of a sudden like I feel the need to do that. I'm like, let's not do that. Like, let's take the strengths that you already have or things that are actually doable and realistic now. So so the grief of being a patient, the grief that medical intervention may be something that has to happen from here on out, that you'll never be without a team again, that you'll always have to take medication forever, that you might not use your body in the same way, that you might not have intimacy the same way, that you might not be able to work anymore, that you might not be having kids, that your life has been cut short. I talk to a lot of people about the natural expectations that I think most of us, if not all of us, have for how life should turn out. My expectation for life was that I will retire at 65. Yeah, right. I'll have some kind of a bout of illness between 65 and 75, whether that's cancer or something else, and then I will die at 94.
Oh, right. I like that number.
It's sure.
It's a blue ribbon number. Like, I made it. That's great.
I want that to be like a blue zone type of number too, right?
Yeah.
So that expectation, I feel most of us carry with us, maybe not as specific as mine, but in terms of like, okay, life, this is our deal, or okay, body, this is our deal. And a lot of my work is like, yeah, that's not like, welcome to being human.
Yeah.
And like a lot of times when people walk through my door, it is their first time of being introduced to not being a superhero. And
Right.
that's a grief. That's a huge grief that like my body didn't work the way that I thought it should. People didn't give me the support that I thought that they should or that I deserve. My spouse is not staying with me. Like I help couples like separate because
Right.
now, you know, it's becoming a little bit too hard and difficult, and that's okay too, right? So all of these elements of grief, and it really does, like I use a lot of military terminology in the work that I do because it really does feel
For
like
instance,
being in the trenches.
Being in the trenches. Okay, yeah.
Let's not be an army of one.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Let's put
Martyrdom.
on our yes.
Yeah.
Let's put on like I'm gonna give you like your battlefield outfit on. Like let's put our helmets
Right.
on now. Like
Fatigues, the
Yeah.
whole, yeah.
yeah, and I think that's just a default thing of mine. I'll use some like sports references too, like being on the defense and offense.
I love that.
It's using creative language also to like help people
It's
familiarize.
relational, right?
Yes,
Like
yes.
to connect and
Yes.
you know, like, oh, this is going to work here. That's because someone needs to be able to hear you, right?
Absolutely.
There's that. It's from White Men Can't Jump. Do you remember that movie? I
remember the face of the VHS tape actually.
Okay. All right, we're dating ourselves here.
Yeah,
VHS.
yep,
But there's
yep.
that great scene between Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes when they're talking about Jimi Hendrix, and he's like, you can listen to Jimmy, but you can't hear Jimmy.
Oh,
but you have to be able to
see?
be heard. I mean, they have to be able to hear you. So
Yeah.
your language has to be specific to, because you don't know who you're walking into.
I don't.
All like the melting pot and the culture that we live in. I mean,
Yep.
there's just, I know in my profession, it is just, it's so vast. And then people's own interpretations of their culture
Yes.
and how they grieve anything, whether it's the loss of a loved one or that impact. And I just can't imagine. So the other thing that we've met a couple of times. I've enjoyed all of our conversations based on your authenticity and your willingness to put up with my shot out of a cannon personality.
Likewise.
Yeah, but I'm an inherently positive individual, and that the belief in the power of positivity. Can you bring someone to that? Because I mean, I've always understood that when you're in that battle, maybe 50% of it, regardless of medicine, regardless of therapy, is going to be your own mental state of like, can I see myself through this?
Yeah.
And that's my interpretation. I don't know if, you know, that's a belief or understanding that you have, but
specifically, I'm glad you asked that. I think specifically the work that I do, it really makes me rise to the challenge of, I'm not sure if I want to say be a parent to somebody, like maybe the parent that they didn't have, of like, I've got you, like I'm
Yeah.
not going anywhere, and if we need to invite more specialists into your care, let's do that, and like normalizing what a higher level of care would be, but really letting people know that whatever you want to talk about is something that I've thought about already, and I'm not afraid to go there.
right.
That's
And Cancer Care Point has those resources. I mean, that's something that, you know, like not only do you get to meet with you,
yeah.
I mean, there's so much care provided in the Cancer Care Point
Yeah.
universe, right? That
Yeah.
you're like, oh, we need, not only am I going to help you advocate for yourself, I'm going to lead you to who that might be
Yes.
within the universe.
Yes. So when they call initially, they'll talk to our admin team, and they will help kind of triage where the most needs are. So it's like financial, housing, like referral back to a social worker, like open communication with other specialists, and we also offer. So all of our services are non-medical, and we offer counseling, which is what I do, and wigs, and nutrition, and wellness, and meditation, support groups, which I facilitate also, all at no cost, which is
Right.
the most amazing piece of news that I get to give people. And so often
Yeah.
people are like, well, will you call my insurance company and arrange this? I'm like, we do not affiliate with any insurance companies.
I mean, I've known about Cancer CarePoint since I moved to this valley a decade ago, and I still just the understanding that vastness of care in those spaces, right? Nutrition, support groups, therapy, wig banks. There's like an army of 12 people on the website.
Army, right? Military.
Yes, right. Back to that military reference. I was just on the website the other day, and I was thinking to myself that I would see just a slew more, and I know there's not.
Yeah.
And it's, to dive in, all the individuals that show up. There's so much synergy between the space that I work in and the space that you help people in. As you mentioned it on the top, right, where you said, everyone thinks that it's incredibly depressing. And right,
you should see me at parties.
Yeah, we're a novelty, right? We're
Yeah,
like, oh my gosh, but I don't want to talk about that. But hey, because they always do. There's always that curiosity.
Yes.
Like, how do you help someone, and how do you get through that? And I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Because the level of self-care for yourself has to be just as important for those that you care for.
Paramount.
Yeah.
And I love, we can get into that too, for sure. I have to walk what I talk. And I know a lot of therapists, like, we can put on a good face, right? And we're asked when we get supervision, like, what are you doing for self-care? It's like, oh, okay, I'm meditating. And like, what else do you want to hear, right? And if you don't, if I don't, I'll speak for myself. If I don't check in with my moral compass and get real clear with where is my burnout, where am I not taking care of myself, you better bet my clients will call me out on it too. So I can't be an army of one. Right. I can't just let this stuff go at work and not like have consultation groups. And I just got a massage last weekend. I definitely meditate. I sleep very well. I eat as well as I can, right? And on the days where I want to cheat a little bit, that's okay too, because I think having that self-compassion piece, again, is something that I talk with people about. And I tell clients, like, please stop being so hard on yourself. So I get to hear my own voice. Yeah. Sometimes I get to be my own therapist, and that's a gift too. And the moral compass piece is so huge. And I think as a therapist, you're willing to go into a cave with someone else only as far as you are by yourself. So as long as I have a flashlight, like, I'm going with you. Yeah. So, and I have to be that
go to the depths, right?
Yeah. And I have to be that support for myself. So I love when people ask me, like, what do you do for self-care? Expecting me to say like something like, well, I'm going to find a meditation group soon.
I have a meditation group.
Yes. Yeah. It's imperative. This work it's hard. It's hard.
Oh, no,
challenging, yeah.
There's a book that you introduced me to, and I want to share it for those that are going to tune in on YouTube. It is The Grieving Brain by Mary Frances O'Connor. You shared this with me the first time we had coffee. Immediately purchased and started reading. And just on the onset of this amazing book, speaking about the brain's grieving, right? And Mary Frances, she doesn't sugarcoat it anyway that she's, I'm not telling you how to feel about grieving. I'm telling you why your brain is grieving.
Yes.
And it was reassuring to me, or I just enjoyed it so much to learn about why our brain's doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
But this is important to you in your work.
It is. And I brought 3 of these books because getting specifically on the topic of grieving, and there's so many different, and thank goodness we have been putting language in different like research fields to what grief means to people and how people are impacted by it, like disenfranchised grief, ambiguous grief, acute grief. There's so many to talk about, but once people find themselves in grief, it becomes like, oh, there I am, right? And so learning how you relate to grief, speaking again on like all walks of life that come to me and they want to work with me, I have to find like where the puzzle piece is for them to find themselves. And so this other is okay if I hold it?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
So conscious grieving, for those people that want...
I'm going to hold this one, right?
Thank you.
This here.
get too close to the microphone. Conscious grieving makes more of like a workbook type of activity for people. So it's not just, I don't want to keep on reading about how sad I am, right? So like try this journal entry, try to talk to people about this instead. So it gives like prompts for people to normalize their grief and to work with it in different ways. And hopefully a lot of like, you're not alone in this, and do you want to curl up on the floor? That's okay too. And so learning how
be where you are, right?
Be where you are. Yeah. And there's so many, like, grief is so complicated, and I think learning how you, as an overview, just live with your feelings in general speaks to a lot of like how you are going to grieve and how you invite those emotions through the door. So, and then the third one that I brought, the wild edge of, were you gonna ask a question?
No.
Oh, okay. The wild edge of sorrow, it's another, all three of these are very, very different from each other in terms of the direction on like how to look at yourself through grieving. And the last one is a very, coming from the camp of like, as a community, how do we all grieve? How can we grieve? And I love this part that he said, that a lot of times when you tell someone that you are grieving, you'll get the, like the sympathy face, which not all of us want that.
I don't need your wince, right?
and very often it's like, oh, I don't want to talk about this with you, or like, oh, I don't know the right thing to say, right? And so to grieve as, we're just coming together as a village just to be with you. Let's do this shoulder to shoulder, like in the trenches.
Yeah.
That means a lot to me too, in terms of like, where do I find myself? Like, I don't want the sympathy. I want action. I want someone to not be afraid to ask me questions like, are you afraid? Or are you scared? Right? Which is very human. And I think in the face of grief, we can really lose just our humanness, and we try to put on this shroud of, I'll just try to make it better. I'll just try to make it right.
I'll be tough through this.
Yes.
Well, we could talk for hours, and I wish we could. We're going to have to come back with Juliann Halvorsen from Cancer Care Point.
I would love to.
It is great to shine light on all of the other grief that we don't know. As you mentioned, you've said acute, and you were talking about, is it a specific thing? Is it very broad? Just understanding that there's so many more things that happen in the funeral universe, which is the loss of a loved one, and really shining a light and bringing that out. Cancer Care Point has an event, and that event is on August 8th. It is their garden party. It is an incredible event. So if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you can attend that event. You can help sponsor that event. And what it does is it helps to make sure that there are those dozen maybe people
so I can save my job
in this wonderful space, caring for people through maybe the darkest time that they're the unexpected dark times of their life, not just them but their families. And I've known about Cancer Care Point for the last decade. They've been doing great work long before that, and it is so awesome that you're there shepherding people through and just helping with that advocacy. I am so grateful that you joined us on the podcast today. There's things that we didn't touch on, and we're going to have to do it again because I love my conversations with Juliann. You are full of life, and I know that the patients that get the honor to meet with you have to be grateful for how you meet them and where you meet them.
Thank you so much. And yeah, that August event is the biggest fundraising thing that we have for the year, so it's a really big push for us. So yeah. Thank you so much for having this space. Also, it means a lot to me to normalize being human. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Juliann. Thank you to our listeners of Guiding Grief. We're so grateful that you tuned in, and please make sure that you dive into what Cancer Care Point is, who they serve, which is our community. That is Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, and Santa Cruz County. This is free services that they're providing, complimentary services to our community to make sure that we are guiding people through the most difficult parts of their life. And as we know, there is only one degree of separation as it relates to cancer, and we all know someone that has had it. We all know someone that's battled through it, and it is individuals like Juliann and the individuals at Cancer Care Point and so many others that are helping through. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to having you on Guiding Grief in the future. Take care. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Guiding Grief podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Welzenbach. Grief is a profound experience, but you're not alone. Let's continue to navigate this journey together. If you have any thoughts, questions, or topics you'd like us to explore, reach out. Until next time, be kind to yourself, find strength in your resilience, and always hold on to hope. Before we end, I'd like to give a quick thank you to KCAT TV for producing our show. Please remember, be good to one another.